Welcome into the CHGO White Sox Podcast. On today's episode, I'll be joined by Jared Wyllys to talk about the signing of Mike Clevenger, to talk more about Justin Ishbia, acquiring the Chicago White Sox, and we'll talk about the start of spring training for your Chicago White Sox. Welcome into the CHGO White Sox Podcast, coming to you live from Studio B of our CHGO offices here in the West Loop of Chicago. I'm your host, Sean Anderson, wearing my brand new ALLCITY St. Patrick's Day merch. So head over to allcity.shop. Yeah, I know our store. allcity.com/store/merch. I know the website. I also know how to say Justin Ishbia's name. I don't know why I struggled with that, but welcome in. Sarah is our producer today. We'll be joined later by Jared Wyllys of CHGO. We're going to be talking about Mike Clevenger. We're going to be talking about Justin Ishbia, and we'll be talking about the start of spring training. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't yet, and make sure you're subscribing to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. We do have a diehard Discord where you're able to talk about all the news from this weekend with us. We have a very active chat currently going on. A lot of excited White Sox fans with the current ongoing rustlings and rumors about Justin Ishbia's reported increase in his minority stake. Jared Wyllys will be joining us to talk about that. But let's get into some of the news that happened this weekend. It's pretty much as much of a Friday's news dump as you can get when you're announcing a signing at 11:30 p.m., I believe, on a Thursday. The White Sox have agreed to a minor league deal and a non-roster invite with Mike Clevenger. Clevenger was on the team in 2022. He signed in November, and then it was later revealed in January and February that there was an ongoing investigation into a domestic violence incident with him and a former mother of his child. The mother's still alive. He's still the mother of his child, a mother of his child. And what was concurred was MLB investigated, and him and the mother of his child agreed that Mike can go to counseling, can go to therapy, and try to work on the issues that apparently or allegedly happened with the domestic violence instance. I'm not ready to talk about this. He was brought in 2022 to be a starting pitcher, to be the starting pitcher 5 for the Chicago White Sox. He had a pretty decent year with them in 2023, and now I know I said 2022, but he signed in November of 2022. But he ended up pitching all right in 2023, wasn't traded because he was injured. I don't think teams understood where he was health-wise at the trade deadline, and also he had the baggage of what happened prior that year, so he wasn't dealt. And then there was an option for Mike Clevenger to either pick up his option and stay with the Chicago White Sox or decline it and go find a different job in free agency. It took him all offseason, and it took him a couple of games into the season. I believe it was probably 3 days into April when he signed with the White Sox for around $5 million. He ended up being a starting pitcher for them in 2024, and he only pitched 16 innings. He ended up having to be shut down with right elbow inflammation and also had a disc replaced in his neck. Now the White Sox are bringing in Mike Clevenger with the idea that he would be a closer pitching out of the bullpen. Mike Clevenger has pitched out of the bullpen in his major league career. He did a little bit in San Diego, and he did a little bit to start his career in Cleveland in 16 and 17, a little bit in 2022 when he was with the Padres before coming over to the White Sox. So the White Sox are putting this guy into a completely new role. I have been very questionable when they've signed him the two previous times about why are they bringing him in. Most people have said because he's an innings eater. Well, now this isn't even the case. This is a guy that's been on your team for the past 2 years, and nobody's wanted him. He's been a free agent for the past 2 years, and you're the only team that has wanted him. And now you're trying to bring him in and really flex him and stretch him, and not stretch in the way that you're stretching a starter, but you're trying to really see any way that you can figure out Mike Clevenger working on the Chicago White Sox. It makes me sick. I crashed out on Friday. I said some things that I don't regret at all. I really dislike the general manager. I really dislike this team. You're trying to build up faith and trust with your fans after a terrible 121 game loss season, and you could have just not signed him. Noah Syndergaard, a very accomplished starting pitcher, also throwing bullpens, also trying to make his way back into Major League Baseball, could be a person that could throw harder than Mike Clevenger, actually hit 100, and maybe, just because he has less baggage, would be a smarter signing. I don't understand this. It doesn't make any sense to me. And this will be the last time I talk about Mike Clevenger, unless he makes the team. It's a non-roster invite, and I have no faith or no reason or no understanding of why he'd make the team. I don't think he's going to be a good bullpen pitcher. I don't think he's going to be a good closer. I don't think he's going to make the team. So that's my thoughts on Mike Clevenger. I'm not going to say anything else unless news breaks.
I will repeat, you could have just not signed him.
It's a very, very good point,
That's
Sarah.
All I wanted to say.
It's a great point by you, Sarah. And if I say anything else, I'll scream my head off. Let's go to our friend, Jared Wyllys. Jared Wyllys is a CHGO baseball writer. He will be down in spring training this week. So make sure you are following him at JWillis, Y's instead of I's, over at X and Blue Sky. Hi, Jared.
Hi, Sean.
Oh, it's good to see your face, and I'm glad to stop talking about that first topic. Let's get into what we ended up doing a emergency VOD about on Saturday with Adam Hogue. Justin Ishbia is now reportedly going to be increasing his minority stake in the Chicago White Sox. We'll have more details come the 28th when some of the smaller minority owners of the Chicago White Sox will finally make their decision on whether to sell or not to Ishbia. And the whole thing that it seems like it's coming down to is the 78. Jared, what else have you learned from this whole back and forth with the Ishbias? And are you thinking that, once the White Sox build the 78, that might be when Justin Ishbia takes his next step up the ladder, maybe to co-majority owner or even majority owner at that point?
Yeah, the more since we talked a couple of days ago about this, when this news was kind of breaking, the more it seems like this is a step. There's a process that's kind of unfolding, and we're seeing another step in that process. Because I think Jerry Reinsdorf, for the flaws that he has as an owner, has a pretty clear plan for this is the state of the team, the state that he wants to leave the team in, and that involves ownership that isn't necessarily his family. I know he's encouraged his kids not to stay involved in ownership of the team. He wants them to sell. And it also involves a new stadium. He very clearly has that as one of his objectives. And so with the Ishbias, this is a step in the direction for both of those things. Because as I said on Saturday, I think there's an opportunity here for Reinsdorf to, I don't want to say salvage his legacy necessarily, but I think when you can end on a note where it feels like you are moving the team in a positive direction, that seems to be what he's hoping to do. So Friday, I think we'll get a lot more clarity on how realistic this is. But that's, from what I've read and from what I've looked at and talked with some people, it seems like this is a part of that process that we're seeing.
Absolutely. There was a big piece that I don't think we mentioned on Saturday from Dan Hayes, and this was, I believe, reported by John Greenberg. So it was in one of the articles that was put out on Friday by The Athletic, but Dan Hayes screenshotted, it was during Ishbia's pursuit of the Twins that the Reinsdorfs came to him and discussed increasing his share of the White Sox, according to a person briefed on the discussion who is not authorized to speak publicly. I think it's just very interesting. It seems like Reinsdorf obviously saw a very big fish out there that was looking to buy a Major League Baseball team. He had discussions with Dave Stewart this offseason, so it wasn't out of the blue that they'd be looking for some sort of plan post Jerry Reinsdorf. There was that piece from Cranes just before last season where he talked about, I'm trying to keep the team in Chicago. A stadium will keep the team in Chicago. If I die and I don't sell it to the right person, they won't stay in Chicago. It seems like this is both a mix of getting the stadium and keeping the team in Chicago, which I think, to you and what you just said, absolutely would improve Jerry Reinsdorf's standing here with Chicago White Sox fans. It's been a very up and down 40 years. We have a World Series. We have a 121 loss year. But I think the biggest thing that White Sox fans care about, White Sox fans might even forget about Jerry Reinsdorf altogether. The biggest thing is that the team stays in Chicago. And I think that's what's most apparent about the Ishbias is that they would be staying in Chicago because of Justin's current $77 million lakefront property that he's currently building out, taking up 3 mansions and combining it into one space. Like, it does seem like this team would be set to be in Chicago forever if Justin Ishbia took over.
And that's really, I think, the most important thing. Is this has been an effort to keep the team here, because I know there have been, the rumors have been out there for a long time about moving to this city, to that city, but ultimately it seems pretty clear that Reinsdorf's aim is to set them up so that they don't have to go somewhere else, so that the franchise does stay here, because it would be an incredible loss for the city of Chicago to lose the White Sox and have them go elsewhere. I think a big part of Chicago's baseball legacy is that you have these two teams, and the, north side, south side thing, all of that, like that's a big part of Chicago baseball legacy, and both teams that have been here for a very, very long time. You're going back to the 1870s for the Cubs, 1901 for the White Sox. I mean, this is a long-standing legacy for both franchises. So yeah, keeping the team here in Chicago is crucial for this. And I think, like what we saw in that Athletic article from John Greenberg and Dan Hayes, was Reinsdorf saw this opportunity, and so that he initiated this contact, and he went to the Ishbias and said, hey, what would you think about doing something like this? I think that says a lot for what Reinsdorf is trying to do. Because given the state of the team right now, coming off of these 121 losses, the future doesn't necessarily look terribly bright, in, at least for a little while. You've got to find something as a White Sox fan to feel good about. So if you can feel like, hey, we might get some new owners here, we have confidence the team is going to stay in our city, those are two really big things to have.
I'm not a huge fan of billionaires. I'm not a fan of Justin, his brother, who's a billionaire, his brother Matt, who's a billionaire, Jerry, who's a billionaire. I think the biggest thing though is, there's a huge difference between being 89 and 47. It seems like Justin Ishbia is very focused and determined, and it seems like both Ishbia brothers want to make sports a big part of their portfolio, and it seems like they're big sports fans, which is just very intriguing. Not only are they passionate about the product, but it also seems like they have the money to actually spend on the team, which would be thrilling finally for Chicago White Sox fans. The other thing that I did want to bring up, just on the idea of when Jerry would take over, I think the biggest thing for everyone to keep in mind, he is 89 years old. The Cleveland Guardians owner just passed away, James Dolan, at 94 years old. So it might be up in AL Central is just all up in airs when it comes to who's owning these teams. But with Jerry, we're not sure when he's going to pass away. But I would say, especially from what he's said, Jared, it seems like Jerry will not sell the team until he passes away, mainly because that's just easier to pass off from to your sons and stuff. It's just, I don't know much about having a ton of assets, but I think from what I've heard, it's easy tax-wise to just do it once it's the sell-off of a state, of an estate. Right. So it does seem like Justin's the looming owner, but this might not happen until Jerry passes away. But the biggest thing is that has been thrown out, Scott Reifert said that right now, the additional majority shares does not directly lead to majority control or dilution for those who don't sell. But with the talk of the 78 and those smaller owners that are apart, Jerry Reinsdorf owns anywhere from like 19 to 30 something percent. Ishbia can increase his ownership stake if for the 78 he puts in equity. So if he puts in equity towards the 78, the people that don't put in equity for the 78 project, their ownership gets diluted and Ishbia's increases. So the more we see of the 78, and if that project does get confirmed by the state of Illinois because of Ishbia maybe taking down that price tag for the state, it does feel like in the future, maybe 5 years from now, that is when Ishbia would be the majority owner. Any final thoughts on the Ishbia story? Because it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be something that will take some time to develop, both in the short term of at what point or if he takes majority share, but also you may not see the impact of Ishbia for a while. Like you said, this is still going to remain Jerry's team for we don't know how long. And so for White Sox fans, unfortunately, that might mean you need to wait a little while before there's some investment in the roster, for example, and you start to see that payroll increase. But I do think in the long-term future, that's the major thing here is that, again, you keep the team in Chicago, but also the product on the field sure seems like it's probably going to change with this new ownership because they're just as much invested in we want to field a winner. And the reality in the baseball world is you've got to spend and spend quite a bit in order to make that happen.
Yeah, Sarah on the Chiron said Matt Ishbia looms as the next owner of the White Sox. That's the one thing, at least with the Ishbia brothers, is there's two of them. Justin would be, I think, the facing owner of the White Sox, as Matt is
my understanding too. Yeah.
Right, Matt's the facing owner of the Suns and Mercury, but I believe Matt would still be involved in the actual ownership stake. I think it's just more Justin taking on this lead. So both Ishbia brothers will or should be included in this takeover, this eventual takeover from Jerry Reinsdorf. We have to take a break here on the CHGO White Sox podcast. We're going to talk some spring training baseball next. We want to let you know about our friends over at Mando. Mando is extremely unique from any other deodorant. This is not just your normal stick deodorant. They have a stick deodorant for sure. There's also the cream tube deodorant. And this deodorant is better than anything that you've ever tried. Again, it's a whole body deodorant that's safe to use anywhere on your body. You could use it on your pits, your thigh folds, your belly buttons, your cracks, your feet, and even your folds. All right? It can go anywhere that you need help not stinking. It was created by a doctor whose firsthand knowledge showed how normal body BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Now it actually attacks those scents and stops it from building up. And you could choose from a variety of fresh scents like bourbon leather, Cloverwoods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. And it's clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. 12 hours after a shower, the average man's Grundle odor was 5 out of 10. With Mando, the average Grundle odor level is a 0 out of 10. And I brought up the stick deodorant and the cream tube deodorant. You can try both with Mando Starter Pack. It's perfect for new customers. It comes with the solid stick deodorant. It comes with the cream tube deodorant. And it comes with 2 free products of your choice, like the mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And for a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code that equates to 40% off your starter pack. Use code CHGO at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Jared, you can't smell me right now, but I smell of Pro Sport. I got Mando covered completely. So 2 thumbs up from this guy. We also want to let you know about our friends over at Lucy. Lucy is 100% pure nicotine. It's always tobacco free, and we are loving the Lucy breakers here in the office. They're nicotine pouches with an extra surprise. Each pouch holds a capsule that can be broken open to release extra flavor and hydration. You could set yourself up with a subscription and have Lucy delivered straight to your door. That way, when you're late for work, you don't have to stop at the gas station to go pick up something. You can just have that subscription delivered, and you could start your week off right. Level up your nicotine routine with Lucy. They have a ton of flavors to try in that Breakers style. You could try the apple, the citrus, the mint, or the variety pack. Head over to lucy.co/CHGO and use promo code CHGO 2025 to get 25% off your first order. Lucy has 30% day refund, Lucy has a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind. Again, that's lucy.co and use code CHGO 2025 to get 20% off. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Joining us back on the CHGO White Sox podcast is Jared Wyllys. You can read his work at jwillis, Y's instead of I's, over on Twitter. We are now going to be jumping into the couple of spring training games that have happened for the Chicago White Sox. Jared, a very common thread here for the Chicago White Sox. They've played 3 games, and they've lost 3 games. Is that surprising?
Well, no, but at the same time, this is the early spring training tradition that we follow every year, right? Where we overreact to small sample size of spring training games while reminding ourselves not to overreact to the small sample size of spring training games. But it is, tough for with the White Sox where you're looking for any sign at all that they are going to be at least a little bit better than 2024. And so it's not exactly encouraging when you see them losing these games. But I would say keep in mind that especially early in spring training, Will Venable's job is he's not trying to win games. He's not managing to win right now. These are scrimmages. He is putting guys in situations where he can assess them. He's using pitchers in different spots or in different ways than you might see during the regular season. There's assessment that's going on right now. There are lineups that aren't featuring what will be their regular 1 through 9 throughout the season. And so all of those things that everybody has to keep in mind, but this is normal spring training process that is not unique to the White Sox. It's what every team is doing. And for some teams, yes, it's working out that they're winning games, and then other teams it's not. At the same time, yeah, when you see like what happened today where there's the 9-run first inning, that's not exactly making anybody feel good. But there's, again, I say you're essentially watching a scrimmage, so let's all try to keep that in mind.
Yeah, 35 minutes long, that top of the first was. Shane Smith having a tough outing. Chris Rodriguez, who I just learned about today, had a tough outing. Not very good for the third game, and I think first home game for the White Sox spring training. There are a ton of different ways that we could cover this. Colson Montgomery, he hit a home run to lead off his spring training off of Caleb Thielbar. Actually, I think he struck out on his first at bat, but his second at bat he hit a home run. But he ends up hitting a home run in his first game, second at bat off Caleb Thielbar. But then his last at bat just now, he struck out swinging. The at bat before that, it was a lazy grounder to first base. I'm not saying to people, hey, slow your roll, but before that home run on Saturday, I didn't think Colson Montgomery was the opening day shortstop. Are you thinking that Colson Montgomery is the opening day shortstop after that home run?
No. There's a lot more that he would have to show, especially at the plate, in order for him to be on the major league roster on March 27th. They don't. There's no glaring reason why they need to rush this guy to the majors, especially given the season that he had in Charlotte last year, where he's shown that there's development that's still needed at the plate. So putting him in front of major league pitchers right out of the gate like that, I don't know that helps him. I don't know. It certainly isn't going to help the team. And so unless he puts together like a really impressive spring, there's no reason for that. I do most definitely think he's going to hit the major league roster at some point during the season, but to do that on opening day, I don't see the reason. I don't see the benefit for either him or for the team. I want to see this guy get as many at bats against major league pitching in spring as he can. But then, the best place for him come the end of March is probably back in Charlotte.
Yeah. And one thing too, there's been talk about Edgar Quero and where he would start opening day. I find it weird, maybe not weird, but Quero only has had one start. Tice had one start. Narvaez had one start. Only 2 at-bats for Quero. Do you think if he was looming for opening day, he would be getting a little bit more run? It seems like it's fairly split, which makes sense. You don't want to overwork catchers too soon into the season. But I don't know if I'm sold on any of these true top 100 prospects being on opening day come, March 27th?
Yeah. No, I think that's for all of these guys. This is something that has a longer trajectory. And the approach to catcher, I don't think that you roster that many guys at that position if you believe that Quero is going to be on your roster on opening day. I think what they did is they provided the buffer for him to be in AAA to start the season if they felt like that's what they needed. And so, like Montgomery, if I'm really aiming for Quero to be in that spot, I'm giving him probably more at-bats than what he's seeing so far, or at least the split that we're seeing right now, if that's suggestive of what most of spring is going to look like, that to me points to Quero's in Charlotte. You have these other guys on the big league club, at least to start this season.
I am thrilled and excited to talk about. He pitched yesterday against the Royals. 1 inning. He did have 1 strikeout. Grant Taylor hitting over 100 miles per hour 3 separate times. I think that's the most exciting thing about this White Sox prospect list right now is you can look at the Fangraphs list, and Grant Taylor is a part of it. But you can look at MLB.com and The Athletic, and Grant Taylor is not on the top 100. I think it's very positive for the Sox that the fact that it's not a consensus like these are their top 100. It's the fact that, there's like 6 guys that are consensus top 100, but even Caro, who we just talked about, even Montgomery, who we just talked about, are off some of these top 100 lists, but then Grant Taylor gets slotted in. When you look at all the pitching that they have in the farm system, does it feel like they should have a starting rotation in the next 2 years? Or do you still feel a little bit concerned that, they are starting pitchers, anything can happen? Like I can look at probably like 10 guys right now that I think in 2027 could be in the starting rotation.
Well, and that's kind of what you need to do is you kind of have to stockpile these arms, because especially with pitchers, that development can get so wonky and it can get so unpredictable. And in many cases, guys that seem like they're going to be surefire starters end up needing to be bullpen pieces or converted into high leverage arms. And that, to me, not to bring up the start of the show, but if you're looking for those high leverage guys for the end of the game, I'd be more inclined to look within. That's all I'm going to say about that. But Grant Taylor offers an intriguing possibility there, because anytime you see a guy that can light up the gun like that, it is inevitable that you're going to start to dream on like, hey, is this an 8th or 9th inning guy at some point, down the road? Is that a role he could be developed into? But I feel positive about the depth pitching wise that they have, including the minor leagues. There's going to be a lot of young arms in that rotation. They're going to struggle. You're going to see some growing pains, but that's one part of the team that I actually feel pretty good about looking forward. Like you said, Sean, where I think about like, say, 2027, it's not too hard to envision a pretty dynamic starting rotation using the guys that they have in their organization right now. So I'm excited to watch what some of these guys do as spring goes on.
Yeah, and it seems like some of these, working with Brian Bannister, have added some sort of splitter or split change. I know Taylor has worked on his changeup, and we saw some flashes of that on Sunday. So exciting stuff when it comes to pitching. To stay with that, Shane Smith, Rule 5 pick, was the 1-1 pick, first round, first overall pick. Came out, started today. Obviously didn't have a good go at it. Came back out in the second inning, looked a little bit better. How much leeway do you think they'll have with a guy like Shane Smith? Do you think that they're going to be like pretty adamant to keep him on the opening day roster, or since it's just, we send him back to Milwaukee for a couple of bucks, it was willing to take that try in spring training? Like how attached do you think Chris Getz is to some of these players?
Yeah, I think in Smith's case, it's more the latter. This is kind of taking a flyer on somebody who you think still has some pretty high potential. So you'll give him a little bit of runway in spring, but there's also there's no real reason to extend the runway beyond that, in my opinion, because you do have a lot of young pitchers in your system that you can give some of those innings to once the regular season begins. And unless Smith really looks great in spring, I would be more inclined to say let's focus on the guys that we have in our system right now. And so if it means sending him back to Milwaukee, then so be it. It was worth a try. If it doesn't work out, you've not really lost anything there.
Yeah. And to update the folks at home, if they're not watching the spring training game, Wickelman Gonzalez came into the 9th inning and he gave up 2 home runs. It's now 11-1 Texas Rangers. What do you make of Will Venable? What are you excited to talk about with Will Venable once you get down there to spring training? Because it seemed like a guy that was a little bit hesitant to take on a managerial role. It seemed like a guy that wanted to make sure that he was in the right spot. And now that his team's 0-3 to start spring training down 11-1, do you think he's having regrets?
I think he knows what he stepped into. So, and I think he took this job knowing that it might be a little painful at first. You're going to have to be kind of coaching guys through a lot of tough games and some tough stretches. He's a smart guy who's been in baseball for a long time. He's worked with a lot of different teams. He's worked with some of baseball's best managers. Bruce Bochy most recently. I got to know Will Venable a little bit when he was on the Cubs staff, working with Joe Madden. So he's, sure, when you're sitting there watching your team give up 9 runs in 1 inning, that's hard. But at the same time, like he knows what he's getting into. I'm going to be really curious to see kind of how he develops the culture in the clubhouse, particularly with a team that they're going to have a hard season, and I think he knows that. But one of the things that seemed to be the case under Pedro Grifol was the guys in the clubhouse at least remained pretty unified even through a really, really hard season last year. Whether that was because of Grifol or maybe in spite of him, that's a whole separate discussion. So to me, a big part of Venable's job is you had something good, at least in that respect. And so what can you do to build on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited to just see how positive he can be through 2025, because we know how quickly it turned on Pedro. Part of it because of expectations, but by the end of April, come 2023 or 2024, I'm mixing up all my years of Pedro Grifol. First year was 2023 when they go like 8-21. Like it felt like there was a huge tide shift already. I hope that doesn't happen to Venable and it doesn't really boulder and steamroll away from him. All right, final question I have for you. Try to dig deep into your heart. There's a ton of pitchers. I'm having a tough time finding a hitter. But is there one White Sox this spring training that you are really interested to see either develop, either try to make the roster, see if they have a different role? Like, is there somebody that you are excited about on this 70-person spring training roster?
Well, I'll go to what I said earlier about pitching, because there are a couple of guys, some of those younger arms that I want to see how they look kind of in their second look at major league hitters. So I'm thinking like Jonathan Cannon or Drew Thorpe. Those are the first guys that come to mind. They're not really they're not fighting for a roster spot, of course, but having had the amount of major league experience that they got in 2024, I want to see what they look like come, round 2, so to speak. And Thorpe, especially with health wise, you're kind of monitoring how he's doing and how he's looking. So I'll go with those two.
I'm excited to see the 26th. That's going to be one very interesting day for the White Sox. Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz pitching on the same day. I mean, that's primetime TV for a White Sox fan in February. Nothing gets as close to that. I think the other guy that I wanted to throw out there was Chase Mydroth. Watching Chase Mydroth over the past 3 games, I wasn't really aware of how small he was. I was throwing out that he could possibly be the opening day shortstop for the White Sox if it wasn't Colson. I don't know if Chase has it. Beefloaf referred to him as having dinosaur arms. He seems very tiny, very diminutive in the way a second baseman would. I don't know if he's a third baseman. I don't know if he's a shortstop. I see Chase more of a second baseman. I was interested to see if maybe he can make that work, but it seems like Jacob Amaya may end up being the opening day shortstop, which would be a crazy turn for a guy that was DFA'd by the White Sox, picked up by the Orioles, DFA'd by the Orioles, and picked up by the White Sox. So welcome back, Jake Amaya. You're our opening day shortstop. Any final thoughts, Jared, before we let you go?
I will be down in Arizona later this week. So for all the White Sox fans, just keep an eye out for that. I'll have some firsthand reporting on Friday on just the goings on with ownership. So keep an eye out for that.
Jay Wyllys, Y's instead of I's on X and Blue Sky. And you can also follow him at ALLCHGO.com. That's where all of the writings will be posted. Jared, we appreciate your time. We're excited to see what happens this coming Friday when you're down there in spring training. Again, make sure to follow Jared. Make sure to follow me. We appreciate Sarah for producing the show. Hit that thumbs up button, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Goodbye.